Welcome to the show, Garry Buster
Oh,
Wilkinson. How are you doing, sir?
Dunlop, I am well, man. Blessed and well. Feeling great.
You still home living in Southampton, there in Bermuda?
Yes, I am still at 7 Coral Acres here. And as I look outside, hey, it's a beautiful day. There is a nice little breeze, temperature perhaps in the mid 70s. Yeah.
Excellent. I wish I could say the same. I'm here all the way in Manchester, UK. It was a warm day, actually. Touched in the high 50s, but
Hmm.
certainly not as warm as in Bermuda. But Garry, this has been interview has been long overdue. And Al and I collaborated, even Steve Burgess and I collaborated. I think Steve had talked to you in the past about doing an interview.
Yes, he
Um,
did.
because you were one of the May 24th winners going all the way back to 1979. But just give us a little, you're married to Sharon. How many years you've been married and how many kids you have? What are their names?
Right. Sharon and I were married in 1974. And if you run the numbers, I'm a think that works out to something like 49 years.
Excellent. Almost half a century coming up.
Century. Yeah. I mean,
Half a century.
of course, you look back on it and you say, "Oh my goodness, where did the time go?" I mean, a half a century. Wow,
Where
incredible.
did where did you meet? How did you meet?
Right. Sharon and I met at Sands. After initially, I don't know if you are aware, I I started out my high school at Howard Academy. And then when Howard Academy closed in June of 1965, that following September, I commenced and started at Sand Secondary. And ironically, that was the same year that Mansfield Brock was came in, and he was the principal at the time.
Awesome.
So, so,
So you,
uh, so to answer your question, Sharon and I met there, and of course, one thing led to another. We stayed in communication, and when I went off to university in 1968, she actually followed me at Toledo and came in 1970.
awesome. And you also have two sons, Garen and Gabriel.
That there is correct. Um, of course, Garen is married. Gabriel is still Gabriel is still single, and
Oh.
the family is growing slowly.
Well, that's great. I mean, it's truly an honor to have this interview with you because I think there's a lot of Bermudians that still don't know Garry Buster Wilkinson. And talking about Garry Buster Wilkinson, how did you get the nickname Buster? Tell us about that.
Well, interesting because recently a tremendous amount of people seem to be asking that question. But um, according to my father, um, when I was actually born in Paget, right down by the traffic light. There is a little brick red house there, just above Eve's Cycle Livery, and I was born there. And my father and mother had this parrot, and the parrot apparently was named Buster. And the parrot was very, very talkative. And and so when I was born, apparently the parrot used to always ask, "Where is the baby?" And
Interesting.
And the minute my mother would bring me home from the nursery or from the daycare, um, the parrot would the parrot would say, "Baby, baby," and so my father said that they decided once the parrot died to call me Buster, and that name just stuck with me. And of course, we moved to Kemp Hill. I think I was around 4, so that there was around 1950 thereabouts. And of course, Camp Hill back in those days, everybody had a nickname, and because that there was a part and still is a part of the culture here. Um,
Interesting.
yeah,
So your nickname, you inherited that from a parrot that used to always ask, "Where's the baby?" And once the parrot died, your parents nicknamed you Buster.
yeah,
That was the parrot's name, Buster.
yeah.
Okay, interesting. So wow, I never asked you that question,
Well,
before, but it was something I always wanted to ask you.
yeah, and really, what I think really made names stick. I think did Rick Richardson did an incredible job when he was commentating on the races to always refer to me as Garry Buster Wilkinson. And of course, people just latched on to it. And in 1970, I think it was 1979, I on my vest I had Buster, and so that name sort of just stuck.
Excellent. So just prior to 1979, like growing up, were you an athlete? Did you participate in running or other sports? What were activities for you back then?
Yeah. Um,
Prior to your May 24th, we're gonna lead into that.
oh, well, okay, good, super. Um, yeah, Larry. Growing up in Campio, of course, I was only about 400 meters from the Rangers Sports Club, and so I always went there after school. And of course, the Southampton Rangers were a very popular cricket team. Of course, they had a football team, and there was always some kind of activity taking place round on the field next to the Rangers Club, which is called Birchall's Field.
Okay.
And so you always had a group of neighborhood kids either kicking football or playing cricket. What was also popular there back then was that on Sundays the Rangers football team, um, the senior guys, Alden Rayner, Brick Doss, Bo Robinson, all of those guys, they would go down to Horseshoe Bay and they would do wind sprints on the beach. And of course, all of us young kids just naturally followed. And
Okay.
so and so I was always involved in some kind of activity. And of course, by the time 1964 rolled around, I was very active in football, but it's very interesting. Howard Academy traditionally did not participate in the inter-school sports. And I remember once having, in fact, Mr. Mr. Edward DeJean, who was the principal at the time, gave me the opportunity to participate in the inter-school sports on an individual basis down in St. George's.
What
However,
event? What event?
yeah, I actually ran the 800 meters. However, I did not run against actual school kids. I actually ran against Jeff Payne and Tony Harper. And that was a very, very interesting experience because obviously Tony Harper and Jeff Payne were very seasoned athletes at that time, particularly Tony Harper, who was a very, very good half miler. And in fact, I do recall Tony running in the low 150s back then.
And how did you make out in that one off or that lone experience against them?
In that lone experience, and it was lone because I trailed by a distance and I finished in something like 209, 210. And I was absolutely shattered. And I think that was in 1963. But in 1964, obviously leading up to that, I had started to run and do a bit more training. And so I also met Dr. David Saul at that time. And I started to run with David Saul at Horseshoe Beach on Sunday mornings. And so when 1964, when the school cross country championships came around, I had the opportunity to compete because Howard Academy actually entered. Okay. And we actually had a team. And that race was an incredible race. And in fact, I have the medal from it. No.
How did you fare in that race? Since Howard this was the first time they had entered a team.
Right. That time, I think I placed about 12th.
Okay.
The Virgil twins, who were a little bit older than myself, won the senior division.
Category, okay.
Yeah. The following year, 1965, we entered again, and I, this time, was able to win. And I was a senior then. And
okay. So from what I hear, Dr. Saul seemed to have had an influence on your early running career, meeting him at Sunday mornings for those Sunday morning training sessions. Is that correct?
That there is absolutely correct. David Saul, and I have always said this, if David Saul perhaps received $1 for every mile that he ran with me, I think he would have chalked up a few dollars. Yeah.
Okay.
David and I spent a tremendous amount of time running.
Interesting. So that's in the mid 1960s, of course. Your first. So May 24th, you won 1979. Did you enter the race prior to that? Your victory, the year you won?
Yes. I entered in 1978.
The year before, the only time, or even before that?
No, I did not run in 1977. I think I was off island in 1977, and I think 1977 was the first year that the race was an amateur race.
Amateur, okay, yeah, because it was professional. Yeah. That's right. Yeah. You are correct. So in 1978, so talk to us about the year before you won it. Talk to us about your experience, your training leading up to it and all that.
Right. My training leading up to that was fairly good. I was not running the kind of distance that I wanted to, basically because I just didn't have the strength and I just didn't have the fitness level. And so I had to train where I was. I had to literally train at the level of fitness that I was at the time. And
who designed your training schedule? How did you know what to do? What kind of runs to go on, etc.?
I basically trained on my own. I actually designed my own schedules.
Okay.
used a lot of information that I had gotten from university. Of course, when I was at Toledo, I had a fantastic opportunity to train and attend different meets, and meet a tremendous amount of different athletes as well as coaches. And so
the pause right there. So at Toledo, you were a student athlete. Were you on the track team? Talk to us a little bit about that, because we kind of skipped that.
Okay. Yes, I started, as I said, Toledo, University of Toledo in 1968. And initially I played football for the first 2 years. And a very, very interesting thing happened. I was in a football game, and at the halfway point, or at the end of the match, I think we were playing the University of Michigan. And the coach came over to me and he congratulated me. And he told me what a fantastic game I had played. And then he said to me, you should seriously think about running track. And it's interesting because I don't think he knew that I had run track, right, in high school. But my times were certainly not good. I mean, I had a tremendous amount of difficulty making the team. But the great thing is that I had an opportunity to train with guys who were fairly good. And that conference was known as the Mid-American Conference. The highlight, Larry, of my university running was that in 1972, in the Mid-American Conference Championships, 2 things happened. One, I had the opportunity of competing against Dave Waddle, who actually won the 800 meters in Munich in 1972.
Yeah.
And Valden Williams Val Caesar, who was also at Toledo University, competed against Hazley Crawford in the 100 meters. And I don't think very many Bermudians know that. Hazley Crawford went on to be an Olympic gold medalist.
Yes. From Trinidad and Tobago.
That there is exactly right there.
Yes. Yeah. Wow. That's a history lesson in itself, Gary.
Yeah.
we're gonna, within 2 minutes, we're gonna go to break. But we're just leading right up to May 24th. And the fact of your education in Toledo seems to be sort of like a prelude and a training ground as you prepare in later years to run 24th of May.
Well, that's exactly it, Larry.
Yeah.
But I ran in cross-country races. I ran in park races. And I particularly did extremely well in cross-country. In fact, I won just about every national cross-country championship between 1974 and 1980.
In Bermuda or at Toledo?
Here.
Interesting.
Here in Bermuda. And
we're gonna pause there.
Yeah.
And when we come back from our commercial break, we're gonna pick it up right from that point, and then we're gonna lead right into your first victory in 1979. Okay. We'll be right back after these messages.
Healthy people in healthy communities. The barriers people with disabilities face begin with people's attitudes. Disability is only one part of the person. Look beyond the disability and see someone who goes to work, has a family, does laundry, gets angry, cries, laughs, and dreams like everyone else. Awareness, the first step towards change. This is a message from the Department of Health.
And welcome back, Garry
Yes.
Buster Wilkinson. So Garry, let's continue on as we lead into your second May 24th. So tell us about your first year. You competed 1978. What was that experience like?
Right. As I started to say, that experience was great. Mind you now, I had prior to that, I had run the Bermuda International Marathon in 1978, and also Boston. And
The full marathon.
yeah, yeah. So 1978 one, 1978 May 24th race. Uh, that race was very, very interesting. That year, race one won. And there was a battle for second place. Jimmy Butterfield and I had trailed Jimmy all the way from down on Queen Street. And by the time we were just about to enter the stadium, I was right on him. And so both of us entered the track. And what
So
happened?
just one sec. So that race started in Somerset and went to
Yes,
the old National Stadium, correct?
stadium.
Right.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. And so you had to enter the track, and then you went around that first band, and of course you went straight on to the finish. And I was able to catch Jimmy. Of course, there was a bit of controversy because they did not have a photo sort of finish camera, and so some people felt, oh, Jimmy won. Some people felt, oh, Garry won. In the end, I was given the benefit of the doubt. But the bottom line is that both of us walked away feeling that we both had won. And so
You mean come second? Come
yeah, yeah.
second.
And when you run those kinds of races, Larry, as you may know, um, finishing it makes not too much difference if you finish second, third, fourth, or fifth. The bottom line is that you want to finish feeling good and also with a personal best time. And of course that there was a personal best time for me at the time, and so I was feeling good.
Can you remember the time offhand?
No, but I can always research it because
Yeah.
the results are here.
Right. And what was the distance, the actual distance? Was it measured or was it an
Um,
estimate?
that's a very good question, Larry.
Right.
And of course, as you know, with road races, because of the terrain, because it varies, it's very, very difficult to sort of say, oh, Larry Dunlop has the 13-mile record, or Garry Wilkinson has the 13-mile record,
Right. So
because it the terrain really has the terrain impacts profoundly on the performance.
sure. So that was a prelude to a warm up, really, for your victory the following year.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. So you were pretty much you were training for marathons to run a half marathon race.
Well, Larry, that's um, that was the dilemma back then. Um, because we did not have as many, let's say, 5 and 10,000 meter races, which, in my opinion, are critical if you are to run a very good half marathon, or marathon even, right? Because if you actually look at the best marathoners, they were all great 5,000, 10,000 meter runners.
Right. As we fast forward, but back then, was that what other races were on the race calendar apart from May 24th when you won it in 1979? Were there any other races on the race calendar?
We had the Princess to Princess 7.5 mile. I also think we had to run the town race, which was a 5 mile
Correct.
race. It was 5 laps.
Yeah.
We had a lot of we had races on the track, which was great. We had primarily 5,000 meter races, not too many 10,000 meter races.
Right.
And of course, we had cross country.
Right. So when we look back and you came second, nipping Jim Butterfield on the line in 1978, what was your preparation like between 1978 and 1979? Did you train? I mean, how often did you train a week, or did you log the miles? Or tell us a little bit about your preparation between 1978 and 1979 when you showed up at the line.
Larry, that's a very, very excellent question, because on the heels of 1978, in fact, Steve Burgess is quite familiar. Is quite familiar with my training, because I actually discussed it with him several years later. Because one of the things I told Steve at the time was that my running in Edmonton, i.e. the Commonwealth Games in 1978, once again, I had a tremendous opportunity to meet coaches and runners. One of those runners happened to be one of the world's premier 1,500 meter runners, Filbert Bayon. And Filbert Bayon, one day, he and I were on the track. I was actually finishing my session, and
the track in Canada or the track in Bermuda?
No, the track in Edmonton, Canada.
Right. Okay. Yes.
Right. And he was winding down, and I was winding down my workout. And so he saw me doing 110 pickups. And so he asked me, did I mind him joining in? And so it was fantastic, because Filbert Bayon had leg speed like 46, 47 second 400 meter speed. So it was fantastic just to finish off my session with him.
So just before you go on, so you were sharing some training, getting some training knowledge, and participating in some training sessions with Philip Bayon for your Edmonton, your participation in what, the 5,000 meter race in the Commonwealth Games?
Good. Actually, I had a 5,000 meter race as a warm up, but Jim Butterfield, Race One, and I were there to participate in the marathon.
Okay.
Yeah. And
awesome.
And all 30 of us did, actually.
Right. But, so, sorry, continue.
So Filbert Bayon, his coach, as well as other 5 and 10,000 meter runners from Kenya, I had the opportunity to talk with them, eat with them, discuss training. And so when I came back home, I modified my training quite a bit. And actually, Jim Butterfield and Peter Lever were extremely instrumental in getting me to a level of fitness between September 1978 and March of 1979. Jim,
along with the specialized tips
yes,
that you picked up
yeah,
while preparing and competing at the marathon in Edmonton for the Commonwealth Games in 1978.
yes.
Okay.
And Jim and Peter, those guys would run from Butterfield and Company, which was down on East Broadway at the time, and they would run out to Trimingham Hill, Middle Road, the traffic light in Paget, on to South Shore, all the way up South Shore to Barnes Corner, and come back down on Middle Road, Burnhouse Hill, and back to Butterfield and Company.
And you participated. You was in on those training sessions.
Yes, and the session basically were high level, what I call tempo runs. They were, I mean, training with Jimmy Butterfield, in my opinion, always trained at a very, very high level. And I can recall when I first started running with them, I was struggling. Those guys would go out and run 5:45, 5:45, just run. And Jimmy would be running very, very comfortable. Of course, in my opinion, he was a power runner. Jim was extremely strong, but also possessed a tremendous amount of endurance. And so training,
which helped him to not only start but finish that Ironman triathlon many years ago and finishing in 7th place.
Exactly. Exactly.
So yeah. you shared with us the preparation for your May 24th, 1979. The second time you competed. So that was the preparation that got you to the starting line. Now, did you fear any runners leading up to 1979, the year that you won? Were there any runners out there that you said, you know what, I better make sure I do my homework, or I'm a little bit nervous?
Well, yes and no. Yes, I did always.
And who are they? Who were they?
Well, you had race one. Okay. You had Peter, you had Jeff, you had Leon Matthews, you had Cal Bean, you had all of these guys who had the potential to run with you or reel you back in after 7, 8, 9 miles. And so I never sort of got what I call cocky and said, hey, I am not worried. However, my performance in Boston, in my opinion, sent a very, very strong message, because I ran my best marathon there, which was 2 hours, 27 minutes, and 35 seconds.
And that was in April of 1979, prior to May 24th?
Exactly.
Okay, so a month before the May 24th Marathon Derby 1979, the year you won, you set a personal best at the Boston Marathon.
Yes.
Of 2:27.
Yes.
So you had the endurance a month early before running and winning in 1979. So because time is of the essence, let's talk right about 1979, the year you won it, the day, the morning of. What was your mindset?
Well, my mindset, as I recall, was very, very good. I slept really, really well. I had rehearsed my meals, and so I had no problems with eating because prior to the race, a month out, I was saying, oh, okay, this here is what I want to eat. This here's how much I want to drink. And I was monitoring that. I was taking notes, keeping notes, and saying, okay, this is how I felt.
You have a running log, as most runners did?
Yes, yes.
Okay, a journal?
Journal. This here's how I slept. This is how my training was the following day. And so I actually went into the race feeling fairly, fairly good. Mind you now, Sharon was due that very, very month because Garry was actually born on May 27th.
3 days later.
Yeah, yeah. A couple of days post the race. And so I was just a little bit concerned that, hey, I hope Sharon doesn't go into labor during the race.
During the race.
I know, I hope she doesn't have labor pains the morning of the race, because that there would have totally shifted all of my energy.
Absolutely, no question. Yeah, a newborn, your son, first child coming to the world. So you're at the starting line, May 24th, 1979.
Yeah.
And it came from Somerset into Hamilton, correct?
Hamilton, yeah.
What was your race plan? And take us through the race.
My race plan was to the first 3 miles, just go out my normal starting pace for Bermuda, 5:30, 5:20 mile, and just get a feel for the rest of the field.
Right. Who were the main contenders in that race that year?
Okay. Once again, certainly Jeff Payne, Peter.
Jeff was there. Peter was there. Who else was there?
Cal Bean.
Cal Bean was there.
Ray Mean.
Leon Matthews. Was Leon Matthews there? You remember?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So they were the top guns.
Guns, right.
And of them, of those runners, which one in particular did you worry about the most, if at all?
Well, I felt that Peter was very, very gutsy, as well as Ray. And so I felt that those guys would come with me.
Okay.
And those guys would not allow me to put a lot of daylight between myself and them.
So take us through. So 3 miles into the race, what position were you in? Where were the others in relation to you?
Well, if you recall, the race unfolded a little bit different from what I had thought, and perhaps from what everybody else had thought from the start, because bang, from the gun, this guy goes out, and I remember this guy, he was wearing a white cap, and he's taking off. And of course, my reaction is, who is this guy? I don't know who he is, but I'm not going to allow him to get that far away. And Peter Lever and I are coming down Church Hill. And this guy has about maybe 40 meters on us.
Church Hill, what parish is this we're talking about?
Sorry, this here is coming out of Somerset. Just past St. James Church.
Okay, yeah. Right.
And we're coming off the hill, and I remember Peter Lever coming abreast of me and saying, "That guy's gonna go, Garry. I think we guys need to watch him."
So this is a runner that had never run No one knew anything about him. He had never competed before. So he is an unknown.
Yeah.
He had an official race number.
I think he did.
Okay.
Yes, he did. Because when I checked the clippings, and there are a number of pictures that I was able to get from a number of people of him and I on Harbor Road, Front Street. Yes, he did have a race number, and I found out afterwards that he had been here. He was a tourist, and I think he was from Switzerland. His name was Carl Cooper-Smith. And so he took off, and so I went with him. And the rest of the field just seemed to have a problem keeping up. And so I said, listen, okay, Garry, this here's it. Go. And so he and I just went, and we ran all the way from Scour Hill right along down to, he didn't get away from me until we were just in back of Rigo Limited as we are heading up to the National Stadium. You know where Rigo Limited Real Estate is?
Yes, near Spurling Hill.
Yes.
Yeah. And, so you and him ran together. You and him ran together from the second mile marker in the race all the way until like what, the 11th or 12th mile into the race.
Well, actually, yes. Okay. I would say from the Scour, which is just beyond the first mile.
Yeah, mile and a half, give or take.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and so we were running together. I felt fairly good, but the pace was quick. Yes. Because when we hit Harbor Road, people were telling me, people were shouting out and saying, "Where are the rest of the Bermuda guys?" And I of course just hey, just kept.
Well, you couldn't answer. I mean, you was racing. You couldn't answer a conversation while you're racing.
Racing, yeah. But it told me that no one else was in sight, and I think the finish times reflect that.
Do you remember your finishing time for that during that race?
I think it was perhaps around 1:13. It's right in the books.
So did he finish in that race? Did he finish ahead of you?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And so you finished what distance behind him?
I was probably about 150 meters.
Okay, so you always had him in sight.
Right. Yeah.
And I remember that created a huge controversy. Because obviously this was sort of an unknown runner showing up on the big day as May 24th. It's always been the big day, Bermuda sort of Olympics. And what was your feeling for this person coming in? And of course, you didn't know how good he was. He obviously had to be a very good runner.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, my feeling at the time, initially, first and foremost, you're always happy to run against the very, very best, and particularly when it brings out the best in you. The only uncomfortable feeling I had was that my feeling, and I was always made to understand that your words that May 24th is a Bermuda National Championship, and that you had to be at least here on island living for a period of time, or a Bermudian in order to run and participate in the race.
Right.
And so obviously, because my feeling was, hey, this is a national championship, how is it that someone could just come, jump in the race, and bang?
Yeah. And kind of like spoil the thunder. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I'm just looking at the time. I think to our viewers, we're going to actually come back and we're going to take a pause. We're going to come back and we're going to have a part 3 of this interview.
Take the stairs instead of the elevator. Leave the car at home sometimes. You'll be amazed how easy it is to be more active. Get on the move to a healthier you. This is a message from the Department of Health.
Welcome back, Garry. So continue on. You shared with us the fact of a runner being allowed to compete into a championship race without really being a resident on the island. So tell us more about that and your feelings and what you experienced on that day.
Yes, Larry. To be very, very perhaps correct, the issue was not necessarily it being a championship race. The issue was whether or not May 24th was categorized as a national championship. And certainly it was used as a national championship by the Bermuda Track and Field Association in order to make decisions with respect to athletes who would be representing Bermuda in the future.
Interesting.
Yes, and whether or not it was for events overseas, whether or not they were just regular races or major games such as the Pan Am Games, Commonwealth Games, etc.
Okay. So that was a barometer for the
Yes.
At that time the BTFA, the Bermuda Track and Field Association, which has been renamed since, which being a Bermuda National Athletic Association.
Yeah.
So in your research, how long had that visitor been on the island?
To tell you the truth, I don't know exactly, but I got the impression that he had been here for several weeks, because in subsequent conversations, Peter Lever seemed to know a lot about it. Peter seemed to perhaps had known or had seen him training on the roads. And
okay.
You know, I also found out eventually that yes, there were perhaps quite a few people who knew that this guy was going to be running in the race.
And that he was talented.
Yes, yes.
Because as I rode up and down the islands, I could see runners whose pace was quick, and if you saw them often, you said, okay, this looks like to be a serious runner. So that incident and the fact that, do you feel your thunder was stolen on that day, the biggest day in Bermuda's running?
Personally, for me, not so much. But what I really had a problem with is that the media tried to portray Garry Wilkinson as a sore loser.
Interesting.
And to me, that there was once again the same old political games that Bermuda has played in the past.
Interesting.
Portrayed this particular Bermudian to be a sore loser, portray him as the bad guy. When in fact, the issue was IAAF rules, a national championship. It's either we are going to comply with the rules or we're not going to. But of course, once again, Bermuda's history has shown that our rules change according to
the situation.
According to the situation, and unfortunately, reality, and I'm not afraid to say it, the rules change depending on what you look like.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah.
That what did come out of that was a rule that a person entering May 24th had to be a resident for
Correct.
at least 6 months for them to be officially recognized.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the good thing that came out of obviously, you know, in my opinion, your winning kind of being tarnished and taken away. And of course, as you mentioned, you know, the paper's not showing you in a favorable light. After that 24th of May, did you run any more May 24ths?
Yes, I ran May 24th, 1980. And I think that was the race that I dropped out down by Port Royal School.
I think, did Jeff Payne win that, 1980?
Yeah.
Yeah, he won that. That was, I think, his maiden victory, because I know he had won the cycling race, and he was one of the first people to win May 24th running, and also the Sinclair Packard cycling race as well.
Yeah.
At the age of 40 or whatever it was he was at that time. Okay, so after 1980, you dropped out due to what? Dehydration or you weren't?
I think a number of things. I think I was definitely perhaps dehydrated, but I think I'm starting to have problems with my left hip.
Okay.
And I said, listen, if I am to run another day, it's perhaps not wise for me to force this issue.
Sure. So you won May 1979, 1980 didn't go as you expect. You end up dropping out. Yeah. Did you compete in any further May 24th after that?
No, I think that was my last May 24th, but I competed in other races. I competed in the International 10K in 1981.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 24th of May, no further participation. Was it due to just choice? Was it physical impediments? What was the reason you decided, or you didn't come to the line 24th of May after 1980?
Well, the bottom line, Larry, was that I had my family there.
Okay.
So Garry was here, and leading into the latter part of 1981, Sharon got pregnant again.
Okay.
And so in April of 1982, we had Gabriel, and there was just no way that I could just continue the intensity of training and be here for Sharon and Gabriel. And Larry, one of the things that we haven't mentioned is that between 1975 and 1978,
yes,
Sharon and I actually built our home. And And a lot of that work, a lot of that um, um, physical work, block laying, plastering was actually done by me. Ironically, I think it was in perhaps 1974, 75-ish. It, it was definitely 75-ish, the end, towards the end, because Debbie Butterfield and Jim literally came and saw me, and they were in the process of trying to
So
start.
you where? So you where? They came and saw you where?
Okay, they came and they came to our job site, which
Okay.
is our house
Yes, in Southampton.
in Southampton. We had just completed the roof, and
Okay.
I remember distinctly. I was down in the second room, which was Garen's room. It was, the plan was that that was going to be the room for our first child. And
Yes.
Garry, of course, wasn't born there in 1975, 76. But Jimmy and Debbie came and they were encouraging me to return to running and to actually come and be a part of their fun runs.
Okay.
At the
Which was
time,
on Tuesdays, was it on Tuesdays down at Botanical Gardens? Are you talking about that?
no.
Okay.
This was a fun run that they used to have on weekends.
Okay.
And they would actually have people at their house, and we would run from their house, maybe go out for 5 miles, 6 mile run, 10. It varied from time to time.
Right.
And then, we always had a nice, relaxing social afterwards, and during which time we had fruit, we had juice, we had
Yes.
like a very, 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 very healthy brunch.
Right.
And that there blossomed big time and actually led to the forming of the Mid-Atlantic Club.
Of MAC. Interesting. Yeah. Which of course many people benefited from. I even benefited when they used to have the fun runs
tremendously
on Tuesdays down Botanical Gardens. But again, we're now winding down to the last couple of minutes, Garry, and you want our viewers to, so we're going back to 1980. We're fast forwarding from what you was just talking about, coming back to 1980. Decided, your son, now you had your second son, you're a family man, running now has to take a back seat. You continue to, but for all the years I've seen you, you've always maintained a high degree of fitness. So you must have turned all that running, the energy or the enthusiasm from running, into physical fitness. Am I correct? Or because you continue to look fit even to this very day?
Well,
so what did you turn your attention to when you decided, to sort of give up the competitive running? What other sports did you get into?
Yeah, well, once I actually gave up running, racing seriously, I just tried to stay fit. And of course, with the children coming, within a short time, while Garen was 6, Gabriel was 3, 4 years of age. And so I always had the children at the beach. Garen, from a very, very early age, ran, but also was involved with martial arts. And so I tended to, obviously, as his father, I would go out with him. And actually, Donald Scott's son, Jelani Scott,
yes,
he and Garen were friends, and those guys went to Berkeley, and they also went to Dalton Tucker, and so Donald and I actually used to coach Garen and Jelani.
Okay.
And so we guys actually ran with them early mornings, late evenings, and so the fitness and the lifestyle just carried on through the years.
Excellent. So one final question, Garry, as our time is just about expired. What will you consider to be your greatest athletic achievement?
My greatest,
In 15 seconds.
right. My greatest athletic achievement, really, Larry, is that I think I was a very key player in helping to build marathon or middle distance running in this country during the late 70s. Yes, during the late 70s. And I have an article by a guy, I think his name is Robert Fletcher. And
we will have to continue as our time has expired. To our Bermudian audience, we want to thank you to having this interview. To be continued, Garry Wilkinson, winning May 24th, 1979. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry.